Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber. We're going to talk about the LIEBER method today. What is that? I don't actually know exactly, so we'll figure it out as we go along. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
When I hear something like the LIEBER method, it sounds like a medical procedure, or if you have nagging hip pain, you really need to think about employing the LIEBER method for a few minutes every morning when you wake up. Our little good news segment, by the way, is internal. Our beloved Ben, producing Ben, has gotten a thumbs up on an internship, and that's a good sign. It's one of those things where you apply to a bunch and then see how many you get into. And then make your decision. So this may not be where he ends up landing, but the fact that he's in the game is a tremendous relief. It is. Kevin, how would you describe the grim state of trying to get media internships in Los Angeles in 2024?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. They fill up quickly. There are not that many slots. Even though you think of Hollywood as this like gigantic behemoth of an industry, when you actually get down to brass tacks on, how many production companies there are, how many interns they have, how many departments they have that require interns, whatever. Long story short is there are very few spots for very many applicants. Yes. So it is cutthroat.
Yeah. And the overall lesson here is to start early. You've got to. Didn't you talk to somebody so this is for a summer thing. So let's say, beginning in June, really. And in February, maybe you talked to somebody and they were like, yeah, it's all been full since November.
Early February, I reached out to someone and he was like, we are booked for the next two quarters, 2 seasons. They're booked through spring. We're booked through summer. And I might have an opening in fall. And this was in February. This is in beginning of February. So they do this stuff early and they have, just an endless supply of highly ambitious and qualified candidates. It's not like it's a difficult process for them to even decide who to pick because there are so many qualified people. So it is a tough thing to break into. So it's an incredible thing. An incredible accomplishment for Ben.
It is. So this is, he's put in a lot of years that we've witnessed up close to kind of break in to the industry properly. And it's good to see that actually happening. So we like hearing the good news with everybody who hangs around with us and listens to the show. And that's cool. But it's nice to see an objectively good I say objectively good, but I mean we're sending him in to Los Angeles in like the worst industry on the planet. So let's see how that goes. But he's happy about it, and as long as Ben has fun, then we're happy.
We are happy. So when I was thinking about this episode, I was thinking about the LIEBER method. I tried to write down a few things because I think I'm not sure how to distill it. So I think I can identify like a few areas in which it's kind of nested beneath. I think, and maybe we can talk this out, that the core of it has to do with valuing time versus money. Now that seems like an oversimplification. Oh, time is money. You've heard that your whole life. But it's really taking that seriously. I think that I'm a little bit obsessed with time.
You are.
I think that
more so than I am.
Yeah, and probably just more so than most people. I don't know what that is and what level of like neuroticism that is required for me to get to this point. But I think about, and I'm not a person who schedules in terms of like, I got to fill out my daily planner. Okay. I'm not like that. I'm not like overly writing down at 12:15, I will have a banana. Like, it's not like that. But there is a constant calculus going on in my head from the moment I wake up till the moment I go to sleep. I swear, about what am I doing right now? What am I doing 3 hours from now? What am I doing 5 hours from now? It's just always churning in the background of my head. I think in a lot of ways because there's so much that I want to get done and there's only so much time of the day.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I want to point out too that this isn't as nearly as neurotic as it sounds.
No, I don't think so.
It's a facet of you having many, many more things and more different things that you have to juggle and schedule and play, make them play nice with each other than most people have to organize. So it's an absolute necessity for you to think about how they all fit in your day, and also how they're going to affect you. Like, is this thing going to make me too tired to do this other thing? Like, with the sheer volume of different stuff you have to do, it's perfectly sensible to and important to go over this stuff constantly in your head.
Yeah, and I read a thing recently that I thought was fascinating. I actually sent to you that had to do with the concept of monotasking versus multitasking.
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
man, that really blew me away because it was really a topic that you and I had discussed many, many times over the years, but I had never codified. And this sort of crystallized and codified it for me, which is that, well, to put simply, multitasking is terrible. Like, you should not be
It is.
doing like three things at once. You really should be doing one thing at once, which is what the term monotasking encapsulates. And the reasons for that is that, sure, you might feel like you're being extra productive doing those three things at the same time, but each one of those things is suffering from the other one, clouding your brain and sapping your energy. And none of the three of those things will be done as best they can, at least compared to if you were just doing them one at a time and carving out the space in your brain and in your time and in your life to just hone in on the one thing. And then when it's done, then move on to the other.
Yes. Yeah, well, the overarching thing here is one of the very, very few, and I mean like 0.1% of academic concepts that actually applies to real life. This entire issue is the concept of opportunity cost in economics. And if there's like every single person needs to understand what this is and why it matters. And the opportunity cost of something is really what you're missing out on when you do something. If you have $20 and you order Domino's with it, then you're not doing whatever with the $20. That's your opportunity cost. You spend an hour watching TV. The opportunity cost of that is, I don't know, exercising. It's whatever it is for you. So it's valuing the trade-offs that you do or don't make, right? And this pervades everything. So we talked a couple weeks ago about hoarders, okay? This is opportunity cost, and the calculus of it for the individual is not the same for everybody, all right? And so you see somebody in distress because they're living in the middle of a dump, and the person on the outside says, all right, you like this stuff for whatever reason, but the opportunity cost here is you being able to live your life in your house. This has to be a smart trade to make. And then the person is, they're valuing it differently. And to them, they're losing something that is much worse than whatever.
Like your kids have respiratory issues because they're breathing in black mold. You need to get rid of this stuff and clean it up. And they're like, I like this stuff. Do you like your kids?
Yes. Yeah. And so it's not nearly as rational as it is when you're talking about something like what you do with $20 in a microeconomic sense. So there are times when opportunity cost is totally rational like that. And then there are other times where it's a lot closer to hoarders. And when you start doing those, that constant churning that you talked about, where you're figuring out what's important to me, what do I give up so that I can get X, Y, or Z, you are doing this at a constant rate. And that ensures that you're always getting the best result for you. My calculations on the stuff are completely different. There's all sorts of stuff that I not only willingly do, but actually choose to do that is not even in the realm of discussion for you. You, you, you have some rocks to remove from your lawn. And when we were talking about that, I was like, if you took a wheelbarrow and spent like an hour every morning on this, in 4 or 5 months, you'd have all the rocks picked up. And you're like, that is the worst use of my time ever. It's not possible to use my time worse. And I was like, oh, it sounds awesome to me. So this really does change from person to person. But the overall concept of, am I doing this? Am I sorting out the options and weighing them and thinking about what it actually means when I choose to do this thing or not to do that thing? Most people don't. They just kind of do stuff. They do stuff and then passively react to whatever the consequences are. This is why nobody cooks. This is the food gripe where I will spend 40% of my income on Uber Eats. You've got an opportunity cost problem there that you are either not thinking about or not valuing.
Yeah, so there are a few different facets to it. One is that I wanted to start with the time thing because I think ultimately that's what all of this hinges upon. All of the other things that I'll mention hinge upon time. So if you're listening to this and you don't value your time, then probably none of this will make any sense at all. But if you want to optimize your time, if you are ambitious about, finding the time to go to the gym or to work on your music or to start doing TikToks or YouTube shorts, and you just can't find the time, then maybe it would be a helpful exercise to start thinking about things like this. Because you only have so many hours in the day.
If you listen to this podcast, especially if you listen to every week, every episode, you clearly do not value your time. That's what Kevin's trying to say here.
No, because you could be doing all sorts of things. You could be on the elliptical right now listening to us and multitasking in a healthy way.
Worth talking about because, Kevin, you are the best at it. That's why I'm glad you wanted to talk about it, because I am increasingly try to do I will say to you when I do the thing, I just decided to do the KevLieb, and here's the decision I made that, makes my life easier. It cost me a bit, whatever. So one of them today was paying a $55 delivery fee for something big that I technically could get half an hour away. Well, it's slightly too large for my car, the box is. And so then it's a question of, do I try to take a seat out and get one of these in and then make 2 trips so I can get them both, which will take up 4 hours? Or do I call my brother to try to get the use of his truck? Do I, there's going to be some intervention here that takes a bunch of steps. And when am I going to do this? Well, the only time to do it is going to be on a weekend. So, it's safe to say we probably do a full work day, 1 day a weekend.
Yeah.
That's generally what we do.
Yeah.
So there's really only one weekend day. And if I do this, I have a window to pick it up after the order. So it has to be done the following weekend. Is it worth saving the $55? It's going to cost me, $15 in gas to do this. So all of a sudden I'm spending, I'm only saving $40 if I go through this stuff anyway. So you run through the calculus of it and it just plain makes the most sense. I don't want to spend $55 on something I can do myself. And I don't mind doing any of it either. It's not a horrible hassle. But the truth is that it wipes out at least half of the 1 day a week I have to do anything else. And is that worth $40? In this case, I decided it wasn't, it wasn't worth saving the $40, that my life was much, much better to have all of these things dropped off on my porch and then I deal with them straight away and life is good. Well, if it had been $400, then I'm figuring out how to make it work. Yeah. And that's part of the calculus too, is where does one decision turn into the next? I probably would have done it myself at the $100 mark, or probably 80, really about double what I paid. 75, I start to really kind of not like this at all. I'm comfortable at 40, but around 75, I'm like, I don't feel good about this. And then that starts to factor in too. You don't want to feel terrible. You don't want to feel like you wasted money or you wasted time or whatever. So it's like, well, which way do you want to feel here? Eventually, you get to know yourself well enough to where that's automatic. You know how annoyed and frustrated you will be, Kevin, when you get unnecessarily derailed in a certain way and it ruins, a bunch of things you have to do. You know that about yourself now in a way that you probably didn't, 20 years ago.
I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the Leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and Liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description.
Well, I mean, yeah, the way that you put it, I think is perfect. That you basically bought 4 hours of freedom for $40.
Right.
So for $10 an hour, you bought your freedom from this stupid task of picking up these objects at Home Depot or whatever.
It was Home Depot.
Okay, well, there you go. So that's how I think about this stuff, though. It's like, what is my time worth? What is my stress level worth? What is my frustration worth? It's worth a lot. All of those things are very valuable to me.
It is. And this is when it begins to get tricky, because it's one discussion when you can just say, whatever, if it costs me $50, it costs me $50. My time is worth that to me. And you swipe the card or cut the check or whatever gets done nowadays. But it's a different discussion when you don't have that flexibility. And that's the spot that, I am for the most part in and kind of always have been, where it's not as easy to make a choice to reclaim your time. You've got to choose. It's either get it done or like take a hit that you really can't afford to take. And so then, you think a little differently about it, where it's, okay, how do I do this in such a way that I do have my time? I do have, the days and the nights and the weekends, or the energy to do my animation or whatever it is you do, when it's not simply just cutting a check. Well, how do you do that? That's the big question.
Okay, so this was another facet of what I wrote down, which is a little conceptual. I'm trying to think on the fly if I can come up with examples. But avoiding problems, I think, is a huge, huge thing that not a lot of people do. You can save yourself so much time in the future. You can save future use, time, stress, energy, often by doing like a little bit of prep or maintenance or something with foresight in the present. Maybe you have to clean the filter out of something, your HVAC system. You're ignoring that, and now the thing's broken. Okay, well, the thing being broken is a huge problem. It's very expensive. And that's a catastrophe. Your boiler breaks in February. Like, good luck.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, life is bad.
perhaps, spending a couple of hours in September cleaning the thing out properly, or paying someone $100 or whatever it costs, $200 to clean and maintenance and replace a part that's gone bad, whatever it is, that will save you thousands of dollars later. So it's not just, Daddy Warbucks over here is just going to pay for like life's greatest conveniences. It's not that. Like, there are many different ways that you can tackle this. And one of them, I think, is just being proactive about saving yourself future catastrophes where you can, because obviously they'll happen anyway. But there are plenty of ones that don't have to, or you can at least mitigate the factors enough to reduce the probability of something going like horrifically wrong, or less things going horrifically wrong. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. And it's made sense for literally 300 years. And this is the fascinating thing about what we're talking about, is that it is not new. It is not unique to what we're talking about. And still, virtually nobody does this. And I say 300 years because we can actually trace this. There's the proverb with what you're talking about, the proverb that I heard a lot growing up from my mother. Those of us who went through childhood in the 1800s heard it all the time. But a stitch in time saves 9. So the meaning here is you have to stitch a thing. Well, if you do the 1 stitch, then good, it's fixed. And you won't have to do 9 stitches when it's further ripped and further destroyed later on. People don't really say this anymore, probably because virtually nobody other than Maria and I, Maria left, Maria and I still stitch. But yeah, so if you think about that sewing example, it's that, preventative maintenance concept. It's the same thing. And this was so seminal that I think it's in Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac. That's what I'm saying. Like, we know that this sentiment is hundreds of years old because Ben Franklin pushed this kind of thing. So none of it is new, but so many problems that people have with time and work and like everything. I mean, it is, I hate to say this, but like almost everybody I know has some problem that they complain about that's affecting them, even if it's just stress, that is totally preventable. And they didn't bother. They didn't bother to do it at all. I've talked about recently, with Taylor, who's a young chatter in the Discord server who does MMA training and stuff like that. I've been talking about nutrition and activity and all that. I'm trying to drop about 20 more pounds. It would have been much easier not putting on that weight in the first place. Yeah. And at this point, I realize it's actually easier to not eat like an idiot than it is to reverse having eaten like an idiot. And if you think about jogging, burning 300 calories or something an hour, well, it takes you about 30 seconds to eat 300 calories of pretty much anything that tastes good. So yeah, the issue here is how do you really truly apply this in ways that make your life better?
Which is the goal. I mean, the goal is not anything other than to enrich your life. And you enrich your life by having the time to do the things that you want to do, to explore what you're passionate about, to unwind in the ways that you want to unwind, whether it's gathering rocks in your backyard like you, or, playing a video game like me, like whatever floats your boat there. But you can't get there and be in a happy, good place with it, unless you're really optimizing the hours of the day. So one of the other things I wanted to mention with this, I actually am interested in your take on it. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but it is in my experience, okay, that for all my life, we would always, whatever the thing was, we would get pretty much the cheapest thing. Whatever would, it didn't grow up rich. So if you needed a thing, it was a big deal. and you would just get the thing out of necessity and you just look for the cheapest thing. I no longer think that's a great strategy if you can avoid it. Now, I'll give you a really weird example. Paper towels. Cheap paper towels suck. They're absolutely horrible. They don't absorb.
Cheap toilet paper is worse.
Cheap toilet paper sucks. You are rubbing that against an incredibly sensitive area of your body every day, doing damage with this like horrible, thin, like sandpaper, like terrible product when for like not that much more money, you can get a thing that's 100 times better. 100 times better for like another, even if it's like 50% more money, if it's 100 times better, that's a good investment.
That's a good trade.
And so many things are like this. I'm sure, I don't know. I've never read anything about this. It's only just been in my head. So if anybody knows that there's some economic principle here at play, or if I'm just crazy, but I truly think not with everything, but with a lot of things, spending a small amount more on that thing gets you like a 10 times better product.
Yes. So there's a specific concept with this. This is marginal benefit.
Ah, there you go.
Marginal benefit is basically what you get per unit of increase, and so that's in the economic analysis, there's going to be a unit of some kind, like $1. What does, if toilet paper is $1 a roll, and this other brand is $1.50 a roll, is your benefit 50% more because you're spending 50% more money? Or is it 300%? Or is it 10%? And so figuring out what the marginal benefit of kind of every option and situation is, that makes a difference.
It makes all the difference in life being good, as far as I'm concerned. And it's not to say it's a hard and fast rule that's like, oh, always buy the most expensive thing or the more expensive thing. I'm sure there are plenty of instances in which, the least expensive is just as good as, or doesn't have the maximum marginal benefit that's worth the cost. I think HDMI cables are like this, right? I mean, maybe some tech nerd will rip me for this, but HDMI cables you can get so cheaply on Amazon, or you can spend like 10 times that elsewhere. They're like $80 HDMI cables and like $8 HDMI cables. Are you ever noticing the difference? You'd have to break and go through 10 of the cheap ones before you've met the price tag on that expensive one. It makes no sense.
Right. And for some people, it does matter. And so this is the core of Amazon Basics. The Bad Spoon just mentioned Amazon Basics in there. Amazon Basics succeeds with its line of products because it's almost always something where the substitution makes little to no meaningful difference to you. AA batteries. Amazon Basics batteries have served me just as nicely as Duracell and Energizer. I'm okay with that trade. I get a lot of Amazon Basics things, and I want to point out one of them specifically because it touches on the kind of expensive is good thing. I go inexpensive on virtually everything in my life. Most of the clothing I buy is used, or I've had it for 20 years. There's one shirt that I have that was oversized on me by a lot in 1986, and I still wear it. I've been wearing this for 37 years. Ducky says, yeah, Goodwill is a good place to shop. I love going to the Salvation Army and Goodwill. That's awesome. Garage sales. That's the life that I enjoy living. However, I do not go cheap when it comes to tools. I go with good, and good can be cheap, but it generally is not. Things like guitars and table saws, cheap is usually a you get what you pay for situation. But Amazon Basics makes some tools that are acceptable for my use of them. I have in kind of my workshop spot all these excellent tools. And I also have 2 sets of combination wrenches, metric and SAE, that are Amazon basics. And that is because my applications of them are not so intense or so frequent that I need to have high quality tools. If they do, I don't think they're going to rust out since they're given their construction and coding. But if they do, I got them for like $7. That was it. I will get another set, and getting, I have a nicer set for different applications. I have a great set for working on, anything serious. But if it's like putting together a piece of furniture, you know what I mean, like that general use, whatever, the right move there is to go with the cheap thing that is a perfect substitute. There is no benefit to me. It would be just plain vanity. It would be, I have this because I want to have nice things, not because the nice things actually deliver anything extra to me. And Bad Spoon says Harbor Freight tools are cheaply constructed, but they get the job done. That's exactly right. A lot of people swear by Harbor Freight as a store because they're not going to use the thing very much, and why spend a lot on it? Or they just would rather buy 3-4 of them over the course of needing it. You talked about your dad doing this with a drill. It's like, to him, what's the point of a high-end drill? And so you're constantly making this calculus all the time. Everybody is. The question is, where do you stop and not do it?
Yeah, so that's something.
And most people do it in a narrow lane, and that's it.
I think that it's really important to mention that I am very miserly with most things. So I think this is why it's kind of a weird method that's worth talking about. Is that I try to be as miserly as I can with most things. However, I almost go like way in the other direction on like a few things that I really think are worth it. So it's this a bit of a wild swing and a wild game, creating the environment in which, okay, I'm going to save a whole lot of money on this, and this, but I'm going to buy good toilet paper. I'm going to buy good paper towels. I'm going to pay that shipping fee so I don't have to spend half a day or the amount of chore required to finding a truck and calling someone. And now we have to meet at this time. And what time are we going to meet? Like all of that is what plays in my head where I'm like, this is a nightmare to me. Like your scenario of like, now I have to figure out how to get these things. Nightmare to me. I am avoiding that. You wouldn't have even made
costs. It that far.
No. I wouldn't even have thought about it. I wouldn't even considered that because I know that's like a 12-step process. And each step in that process is annoying to me. It's an unknown. It's like unknown on top of unknown on top of unknown, with the overarching known being that I'm going to spend 4 hours of my like one day off doing this crap. No way. I would never, ever, ever consider that.
So the differentiator here is with you is that you are probably more honest with yourself about who you are than anybody I know. It's not even close. I can't even think of somebody I would qualify as being as honest. You have self-diagnosed what matters to you, what doesn't matter to you, and how you're going to go about, optimizing in that. You do that with really everything. And so sometimes it leads to a more expensive option. Sometimes it leads to, who cares? You go with the cheap one option. But you're instant with it in a way where, I have to deliberate most of the time. I deliberated over this delivery thing today where like I kept the tab open, kind of thinking about it. And 15 minutes later, I decided what to do. Mm. And you would have done it in 5 seconds and not even considered the alternative because you know yourself so well and you're so good at doing this calculation quickly. I'm getting better because however many times over the last 15 years I've said a thing and you're like, why don't you just do whatever? And then 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months later, it turns out that you were 100% right. Yeah. Like indisputably correct about what I should have done there. Like, all right, I need to think about this stuff differently. And so I do that a lot more often. And so I do it a little faster than I used to as well. But that's the important thing. And so when you said you wanted to talk about this, my first thought was, why is everybody so bad at this? And I think the root of it is that they are not at all honest with themselves about themselves, which is kind of the core of being able to do this. When you know everything that you need and need to avoid, like, you know the things that annoy you, Kevin, to such a better degree than most people do. Like, you could make a list of like 171 things in the world that annoy you. Most people are like, yeah, here are 3 things that kind of get on my nerves. And that's where they top out. But that means you can avoid or mitigate all 171 of those. Everybody else is dealing with the 168 that they've never been honest with themselves about. And I think that's at the root. There are 2 things. And one is understanding the trade-offs, the marginal benefits and marginal utilities and the opportunity cost. But even that doesn't really matter. It doesn't really work if you don't know exactly who you are and what you want.
Right. What you value and what you don't. Yeah. That's really kind of, at the bottom of it. Because you're right. That in terms of the thing that you spent 15 minutes ruminating on, I would have made that decision in a split second. But no, I'll pay the $40 because I do that calculus instantly in terms of like gas money and my time and asking a favor of someone. Like, all of those things are baked into that cost. And I think about that right away. And I think, well, that's not worth it at all to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. I don't know why I do that. I have no idea why I do that. Just to the degree that you're saying is such an outlier and weird.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people who do this very well tend to be OCD-ish, right? And that lends itself to this kind of analysis. You don't have any of that. You don't have the neuroticism. You just got good at it somehow. It seems like you just kind of fell into it and thought, oh, this is working out, and then just continued to do it. And that's obviously much more healthy than having it be the result of something that requires medication. But I laugh because Boss Thread said, I splurged on some good work boots 11 years ago that I've worn daily. Resoling costs less than new boots. Let me tell you, I don't think you know this story. There was a point at which I had $0, and this was maybe 2008, but I mean literally zero. I was living at home and I had no money at all. I got a small, kind of gig of work. I can't even remember what it was specifically because it was so long ago. But I know that I got $1,000. And I'm like, $1,000 for me is literally 18 months of food. So I got $1,000. I'm like, I can retire now. No, but I was good for, a long time, whatever. What do you think I bought with that $1,000?
Well, since this came up and was sparked by boots, I'm guessing boots.
I did give away.
I put two and two together.
But they didn't. They weren't work boots. And Boss Red says Merrill Mocks, which I still wear. My dad gave me a pair in 1998, and I wore them until last summer when I began wearing his used ones. So I've still never purchased a pair, but I'm on my second pair in 26 years. And I could have resold the original pair. But yeah, so I actually bought a pair of Lucchese cowboy boots. And I did that. They were about $400. I did that because they last forever. I have walked, now I wear a different pair most of the time. But when I semi-retired those, I know for a fact that I'd walked over 3,000 miles in them because I figured it out. I figured out the walking I was doing when I was living in the different places. Because you've got routines in cities, you just do. And so I could make an estimate of, well, here's what I did and how many times I did it over the course of a year and added up the years, over 3,000 miles in that. and I haven't even had to resole them. One heel could use a replacement, but it doesn't bother me. But what's the alternative here? I buy a cheap pair of boots for $40, and how many of those do I buy over the lifetime of these boots? I've had them now for over 15 years. Well, who's the idiot? On paper, it looks like I'm a moron for spending $400 on boots. Well, I think I'm not a moron. I think that I saved a shocking amount of money over the years. I know that I did. And I deliberately bought those boots because I needed a good pair of shoes. And if I got boots, then they could function in a lot of different ways. You can get away with nice boots with a suit, with jeans. It's kind of the all-purpose thing. Sneakers are not like that. Loafers are not like that. You can kind of make Western boots work in any situation at all. So it's like, okay, this is going to be my feet for the next 10, 15 years. And $400 was a fine price to pay. Lucchese's are very, very good boots. They're one of the best, if not the best brand of boots. I could have gotten something, for $150 or $100, but I think I made the right call on that. I did this with my car. I don't drive a fantastic car. I drive a Subaru Impreza. Okay. It's good. It's pretty good. And it's very reliable. And it was the right price point with all-wheel drive, which I needed for the snow, with the quality that I needed, because I really can't afford to have car bullshit go wrong all the time. It's really expensive and really disruptive. When I got that car too, I needed to be depended on by others. And so that was important to me with, okay, I can't get the car I actually want, which is cheaper. I have to get something that's of a certain level of quality so that I can be dependable in these other situations. Well, so I found the right balance between those two things. I got a great price on my car. So like I found the balance that I was comfortable with that also fulfilled my needs.
Yeah. And I have a couple of more examples to talk through about how this, actually one is how it goes wrong. And the other one is how it goes right. Well, really it is the LIEBER method that we had with someone we know recently. The first how it goes wrong is an example where I knew someone who had this washer dryer that kept breaking all the time. It just kept breaking. And they kept hiring repairmen to come and fix the thing.
Oh my God.
And if you've ever hired an appliance repairman, it's not cheap. It's not like they come out and fix the thing for $20. It's not like they come out and fix the thing for $50. You're spending hundreds of dollars to repair this broken thing that keeps breaking. So over the course of, a couple years of having a repairman come out and spending $450 each time they come out, guess what? You just bought a brand new dryer like twice over. Yep. What are you doing?
People do this with cars.
What
all
are
the time.
you doing? What is happening here? Yep. This sort of thing drives me mad. It drives me as mad as the no light switch panel on the electric on the light switch on the wall, having no panel. That drives me insane. And then this thing also drives me insane, which is you're spending all of this money to fix something that sucks and is broken and should get thrown out when you could spend the exact same amount of money or less in so many instances to get a brand new thing out of the box, ready to go. That's going to last you years with no problems.
It's a much better value. It's a much better use of your money, even if you don't even think about the annoyance factor and the disruption and all of that. It's just plain a smarter use of money, And so at a certain point, I realized that, I came up with a quip for it that there are a lot of times where there's nothing more expensive than trying to save a buck. And that can be in the time you spend trying to save money, which when I had no money, no money, then I could spend endless time on things. I did this with flights because I had to, so let's say I spend 50 hours tracking flights to save $300. Well, I needed to because I couldn't get that $300. But the smart move would be to do literally any job or help that somebody's paying you for at all for 50 hours. And then, have that money to offset the Easy Flight thing, plus a lot more. This comes in with people who volunteer and do charitable things, especially when higher up people do it, people who make decent money. This really bothers me because if a successful lawyer, for example, is like volunteering at a food kitchen, that's a good thing. That's a nice thing. However, I would much rather have that guy practice law for a day, bill people who are paying for his services, and then donate the $1,500 to the food kitchen. If he cared about the food kitchen, that's what he would be doing. It wouldn't be scooping out food for nothing. That's vanity. If he cared, he would actually not be volunteering. He would be doing what he can make the most money at, what he's best at, and then shoveling that money over to the thing that he cares about. So I get as bothered by that as you do with the car repairs and dishwasher repairs and whatever. Mine is tricky. I can never say anything about it because you can't ever say oh, good story, but actually you're a really shitty person. And here's the economic reason why you're a bad person.
Right.
No. So I just have to think it and seethe.
Yeah, no, there's a human element at play there that, they might, certainly attach some value to, some social, ego boost, whatever it is. They get something out of it. They get out of the office. There are other factors at play. But here's the other story I wanted to tell about the LIEBER method going well. Someone that we know recently was in a situation where their rent was raised out of the blue by a lot. By
30%.
30% rent hike just dropped in their lap, which is insane. An absolutely insane hike, 30%.
With something like 2 months for the lease to be up. And Ducky, who says sounds like they want them out. No. This is an extremely competitive housing market, and it simply is. They can command those rates now, and they want an occupant who will pay the market rate. And they're happy if it's him, but if it's not him, then it will have to be somebody else. So no, he's a great tenant. There are no problems. The rental place is happy, and he's happy there too. So yeah, it's strictly a market rate issue. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, he started doing his own calculus. I think we've said the word calculus about 70 times in this podcast, but
it fits.
Thankfully, he started thinking about this because the gut reaction is, rightfully so, to look at that and say, well, I can't afford that and I'm going to move, right? That's the instant reaction to receiving the news that your rent in the place that you're at is being jacked by 30%. You say, okay, peace. I'm out. I'll find a cheaper apartment. I'll find an apartment that's, in the price range that I'm used to paying, and I'll just have to move. Well, interestingly, he went through the opportunity cost, the cost benefit analysis in his own brain, went through the process of thinking about and looking into what it would take to find a new place, which the area that he's in is ultra competitive. It's very difficult. It's not like you could just stroll into any apartment complex and, the keys are on the table. It ends up being like a nightmare of a war to just get an apartment, okay, on top of all of the stress and anxiety of finding a place, getting used to the neighborhood, where it is. How are you going to now you have to move. So you have to pack up all your crap, and then
brutal.
Yeah. I've moved so many times. It is so horrible. And it's such a time suck, and you always need help from other people, and they don't want to help you because no one wants to move, let alone move somebody else. So you're losing days just on moving, like breaking everything down, packing it all up, moving to the new place, unboxing everything, setting it all up, figuring out where to put everything, rehooking up all of your work equipment and entertainment equipment and whatever it is, probably going grocery shopping and starting the whole food thing all over again. When you start going down the laundry list, it's a pretty long list of crap that you have to deal with to move, to find this new place and to move. And most importantly, where we started this topic, your time. So you are giving up days and days and days and days of your time, maybe weeks stretched out, over the course of months when it comes to setting up a new place and everything and getting used to it. When what you could do instead is just pay the extra 30% and stay in the apartment, because you could just work and make the money rather than giving up the time to doing the task. You could put that task to work for you, for your benefit, and maybe make out ahead the same way that you would have when you're talking about your airline example, where you spent 50 hours looking for a flight to save $300. If you had worked for 50 hours at $10 an hour, that's $500. Sweet. You just made out $200 ahead and still only spent, the $300 on the flight or whatever, however that works out. At the same time, that is the reality of how you're spending your time. You could just pick up some extra shifts at work some doubles, and not have to deal with any of that like life ruin, and just stay where you are.
Right. It's simply which of these two paths is easier for me to deal with.
Yeah.
And this, the guy we're talking about is the best person we know in his field. He's very, very good. It wouldn't be difficult for him, be time consuming to work a little more and whatever, but you balance that with what it's going to take to move here and say, which of these two problems is easier for me to solve? Well, most of the time it's pretty clear which direction you go. When you really are honest about you and whatever the alternatives are, when you put them up next to each other, it's pretty clear. What I rather, and if it's not, then you need to find out why. So it's like, if I work the 50 hours and I not only cover the 300 on the flight, but I also have 300 more to take with me on the trip, versus I'll spend 50 hours to save 300. If I choose the save thing, that's because that working option isn't there for me, which happens a lot. Sometimes you just have to do the grind on whatever and DIY it because you can't do the better choice. It doesn't exist. If it exists and you don't do the better choice, there is a reason for it. I personally enjoy finding deals on things. I really like that process. It's a hobby for me. I pay attention to what people talk about and what they like, so that when I see a deal, I can send it to them. I can tell you 4 years ago, Vibecat in the Discord told me that he liked Milano cookies. And when I see Milano cookies on sale, I send him a link. That's the degree to which I enjoy this. I'm always asking my brother, who does a bunch of different things and needs all sorts of tools to do them, different properties. What do you need? What do you need? Because I'm looking for myself anyway. It's no additional work to notice something else on a page. Ducky mentions the pure protein sale. Yeah. And I had a conversation about protein with Taylor the other day, who is a vegan and needs to increase protein intake. And that's tough because all the whey proteins and the casein you can't have. So it's really pea or soy protein for him. I was like, all right, well, how do you get all this protein you need for regular consumption? He wants this because he's doing training stuff, and it can't be shockingly expensive because it just can't, So like, what's the cheapest way to do that? I love that process. Bad Spoon says, found the protein bars. I just restocked my shelves. I sent you the picture of that, didn't I, Kevin?
Yeah, you did. It is meticulously organized.
It is. Yeah, I love this. So if I'm choosing that option, I have to be honest with myself and say, I'm doing this because I want to. I enjoy this aspect of it. And that's more important to me than my time or the money.
Right.
Or, well, the time I'm spending on this is the benefit, is me enjoying this over here.
The outcome. Yeah.
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 Uh,
But my point, like overall, is to say that, like, I think the default is to do things like, well, the rent is going up, so I need to move. That's the default. Or the dryer's broken, I need to pay somebody to fix it rather than buying a new one. Like, that's the default. And certainly and surely there are a million of these different cases. Everyone is different. Everyone is in different circumstances in their lives, in their families, with their work, everything. I want to just be clear about acknowledging that everyone is at a different place here. But my point is that with these different things, and no matter who you are, it can be worth considering not the default. It can be worth considering sort of a heterodox approach, and sort of an approach that seems stupid might actually be way better than the obvious approach. Like, the stupid idea over here, in some cases and in some instances, is so much better than what seems like the obvious solution.
It's hard to get in the mindset, though.
Yeah.
It's hard. And I thought of something, because I know we're about to wrap up here. Bad Spoon, that is, so I put the picture in the Discord of my back room shelves. I have a couple different food storage areas. And in the back room is where I put tea, other drinks, and protein items. Bad Spoon has seized upon a suspicious looking container filled with pink powder. That isn't Himalayan salt. It's the same color, but that's actually a cure for jerky. The specific brand on it is Instacure, but there's a cure that you mix into to items that are, for preservation with meat, so they don't like grow bacteria and all of that. And it doesn't require very much at all. That amount of Instacure is enough for like 300 pounds of meat. But it made sense to just buy like a pound of it. But yeah, it's back there. But there's, so again, we're wrapping up, but there's a thing that I want to hit. Maybe it's even its own topic, where it's from that monotasking thread that you linked me to. The guy pointed out he had a hard rule to never, I think he called it mortgage future time. Never do anything that will take up time in the future. Now, I don't think never is the right thing here, but I am a horrible offender of this. I do this to myself more than anybody I've ever met, where I will buy something or do something that is going to cost me a significant amount of future time. Then you're stuck with it. You're stuck with it, and you have to do the thing or choose not to do the thing, in which case you never should have gotten the whatever in the first place. I always do the thing, and that's good. But my list of stuff to do is it's like living on a credit card of time, where I'm just charging all the time. And my credit limit is really whenever I die, I guess. That's the limit. But I say this to you all the time, where something pops up and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'll get that done in like 6 months. Or I think a year from now, I'll be done with this. I'm comfortable with it. And I like all the things that I kind of charge to my future. But at the same time, it has a tremendous effect on how you go about your life and what your flexibility is. I have a list of obligations that's like in a cartoon, when the squire like pulls out the scroll and it drops and rolls 80 feet. That's my list of obligations that I've committed myself to for the future. Well, that's something I have to think a lot more about. What I see with most people is they make those obligations and, then can't make good on them. Usually their circumstances don't allow. I have a life that lets me do that stuff. I'm not deciding. Like last night, I worked to bring electricity to one side of my workbench in a better way. Well, I wasn't sitting there thinking I'd rather, reshape this iron bracket on a power strip instead of spending time with my kids. No, I didn't have to make that trade. I just did it. But a lot of the time you don't have the time or the money or the energy, or things change, and you've committed to the future like this. So when he said that in the thread, I can totally see the wisdom in avoiding as much as possible future commitments. I've been thinking about what that balance is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the kids thing because, we always talk about like, oh, you have to carve out time for your passion project. Well, maybe your passion project is spending time with your children and your family. Maybe that's your passion project. So it doesn't matter who you are and what your life is like. Being able to not mortgage your future time and optimize your current time has a price tag. And it's certainly worth considering for you, for yourself, for your own situation. What is that price tag? It's worth thinking about.
What is the price tag of all things?
It's all economics.
It really is.
Everything is economics.
It really is, in the literal sense of decision making, not, what's happening in Biden's America. It's not like talking about the economy. It's nothing to do with that at all. It really is little things like, do I buy the store brand of carrots? Because, they're the same as the other carrots, versus do I buy the store brand of toilet paper
and now I'm buying Preparation H to deal with my hemorrhoids. Yeah. I mean,
that's right.
Like, it's got a cost, buddy. It's just, you're paying for it elsewhere.
If your brain doesn't tell you, your beehole's gonna.
It's screaming down there. All right, guys, we're out of here for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. And thank you so much to all of our patrons for doing so. We'll see you next week. All right. See you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sidpoke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezergood, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videoger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Jelksies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.